So we're going to transition here into the prioritization portion of the discussion, really what you came here to do today. Just a couple of notes before we head off in that direction. There are a lot of these funding sources can be used in various places. That's the other difficulty, and I think you identified that earlier, that you can have a project, you can have multiple funding sources, and these funding sources can go to different projects. So it's not as simple as this pays for that, this pays for that. ARPA is a big unknown in all of this. ARPA can come and backfill lots of areas that you may need. So that fits almost everywhere that we're talking about. General fund certainly fits everywhere. Some of these are more restrictive. I will get into that in just a second. I think we've all heard some initiatives may require additional personnel. That I think was clear. And we will be coming back in February 2022 with more information. So out of the projects that were talked about today, these projects on this list are, yeah.
Sorry, I keep talking about this, but my concern is if we wait till February of 2022 to understand the additional personnel needs, by the time you get a job rec and you post it, you're not hiring probably till close to spring, summer, kind of. So could we do that in early January maybe?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and talk about the personnel. It was only a couple slides away, but I know this has come up a couple times now. So in the fiscal analysis, we did include costs for about $750,000 for additional staff that aren't here now, and those costs were built in. They were not, and they were not approved by council yet. And I made that clear in the memo. That so when I said we had $1 million of general fund capacity, that $1 million was after pulling and reserving $750,000 a year for current staffing needs in the general fund. And we listed the staff. There was, I think, 1 2/3 additional staff in community development, HR, and there was 1 in IS. And it sounds like we're going to have a larger discussion. There may be additional staff, but $750,000 was already pulled off and reserved for that. And that's not for new projects. That's just for staffing needs today. There could be more needed.
Yeah, that's my question is, so that covers, so everyone has work-life balance today, but then we're giving you a ton of work. So how much incremental would you need to not burn some, you know, we don't want them working crazy hours.
So when we're talking staff for the new initiatives, that really is part of the February 2022. It's hard because we don't know which initiatives are going to come forward. It's kind of the chicken and the egg thing. Do you do all the work and say, here's all the staff we need, and then come back and say, well, these are the 5 projects, and you know the other 15 projects that have all that work done, just kind of put them on the shelf.
So 750 would get you covered for today. That would be good, and then we can talk in February about these are the projects greenlit, and then this is what you need for those greenlit projects. Okay.
That's correct. That's what that was the plan. The idea here was that we did not want to put all the money to projects and then not have the staff to do them. So, and even with the existing workload, I mean, that made no sense to say, okay, let's talk about capacity. You have $1 million capacity, but we can't get the job done today. Like, that doesn't make sense. So we had a meeting internally with the department directors a few months ago and talked about what are the immediate staffing needs today. Ignore these proposed projects. What can't be done today? What staff do we need to get done what's currently being asked? And that's where the $750,000. I mean, internally we might have to revisit that or have a little more discussion, but that's what's in here right now. There's a reservation of $750,000 separate from the $1 million capacity. So we can hire the 4 new staff without any impact to anything we're doing here. But there's probably a larger discussion, but that's where we're at.
Okay.
So does that funding, I mean, we lost Gail in economic development, and we have Peggy in there at halftime. Are we getting somebody to fill Gail's full-time position in addition to the assistant city manager?
Yes. So economic development will be at their staffing level that they've historically been at. The allocation, that's what Josh is referring to. So that's kind of a funding mechanism. So we charge half of the ACM to economic development and half of the ACM to the city manager's office. It should be about what they're working on, but I can't. I'm not 100% sure that is. Then we have the equivalent of Josh, and then you have the Peggy's replacement. So there would be 2 plus the ACM, which is what they were at prior. Gail's position would also be filled.
Peggy's position will be filled and Gail's position, so 2.5 below, and then the ACM. So Josh, Gail, Peggy's positions, and the ACM.
Yeah, there may be some restructuring, I believe, that Tim might be doing, but the head counts, right?
Gail replaced Peggy when she retired, and Peggy replaced Gail.
No, and I
So
understand
one
that.
position there, but for those two different names, one position there. Josh is backfilling for the senior analyst, and then we're recruiting for an economic development manager position. That would be that other vacant position that's currently being temporarily filled by Peggy.
Okay, and then the assistant city manager will also be,
It's going to be 75% economic development in actual application, and then assisting land use with the community development department and any special projects that come up.
okay.
And then we probably will come back and ask for some administrative support for economic development, because right now we're pulling Josh away from doing heavily critical economic development stuff to do contract management and receipts, reimbursements, and it's just not a good use of his time, right? So we need to refigure some of that structure out so they're more effectively being used. But to kind of back to your question, just guessing, and I probably shouldn't even do this, I don't anticipate maybe needing 2 to 3 more with all these new initiatives, even if they're all approved. So just to give you some sense of, it's not going to be a significant new ask, even with some of these initiatives. And I shouldn't have said that.
And I think that they should just, 2, 3, that's fine, but always be honest with us, because we ask a lot, and I know it's more than you've ever seen. So just know that I want to support that. Like, I want our city to be better, but I also want to support you guys. I don't want your staff to be burnt out. That's never what I want. So just tell me directly, like, I need another head count. And I don't care what month it is, like, bring it to the council and talk to us about it. Like, because I would rather have that conversation than people quitting because they're working, extended hours.
Absolutely, 100%.
Thank you.
Okay, before we get to the prioritization, there'll be a few items that aren't on there in discussion with the group. Some of these things are mandatory, so it didn't make a lot of sense to vote on them. Certainly you're free to take any of these right now and say, we don't want to do it. But it did make a lot of sense to put these to the vote, just because the intent here is this is council strategic initiatives, things that you want to do for the public. And if there are things we either have to do or things we kind of need to do behind the scenes, such as a rate study, such as a class and comp study. Obviously nobody in the public is going to be writing in and asking for that. So it's we're not. It's hard. I get it. It's hard for council to prioritize those things. They're operational. They need to be done. They should be done. If you want to, say, wait a minute, you got the wrong ones up there, or that shouldn't be there, that's fine. But this is what we've got. So this wouldn't be on the up for the vote. I'm probably going to skip
One quick question, sorry, because I forget that Damien's back here. Does this 750 include any incremental headcount you need based on the additional? Do you need additional headcount also?
It's something I probably want to talk with my fellow directors about to get a sense of it. But our office is busy just like everyone else is.
I know we've made a lot of work for your office, so we should have that included in, as soon as you have that too.
Thank you.
Sorry, I keep forgetting you're back there, and I keep talking to them.
I'll skip this slide if that's okay. I think this has been covered already. This was meant to provide some information on Measure X, and this is a summary. I heard it discussed earlier. Unless there's more discussion here, I'll just skip this.
I guess my only thing, Carrie, is there a way that we could find out if the county, I guess, is using that for the city of Antioch, or what's going to transpire with that, or do we have an opportunity?
I can give a little update. So thanks to Captain Herbert, he flagged that, hey, did you notice that this Measure X allocation was actually approved? And I said, I was not aware. So I immediately reached out to the CAO at the county and said, hey, who do I need to talk to find out if this funding is even available? We're looking at either the funding for a current facility we have that we're looking at assessing for use center, or can we do it with a brand new facility or in conjunction with another facility? And they got me to the right contact, and they said, we have not determined a site at this point, and we're not ready to even start the site selection process until we get a little further down the road. So I've scheduled a call in January with that person, and said, hey, I'm first in line, formally, because they said they haven't talked to anybody else or committed it. So that's a good thing so far. If we decide we want to do a youth center at the tech center, somewhere else, or nowhere else, but at least gets you more information by the time we come back in February.
Sounds good, thank you.
Did they talk about the timing? I don't know if I missed that.
They both just said, wait, Tim, we just barely got this funding approved. Give us a break. I said, well, as long as I'm first in line. So
Okay.
We'll talk about it. They haven't made any decisions yet.
Thank you.
So let me just clarify. They're going to fund 2 youth centers, one in Central County and one in East County. And so we're going to make a play for the East County one.
All right, so we're really just about ready to get into the meat of this and try and prioritize some things. To try and help, I think we've talked about what the funding sources are. This chart here in the next couple pages illustrates what the funding sources are for the most part. But again, as I said, there's a lot of mixing and matching. It just makes it so difficult to just say, to put up like that matrix and start just slotting things in, because a lot of it depends on the scope of the project.
And really, again,
then,
just starting with the most restrictive
Yeah.
funds and then getting all the way to general fund where everything's a go, right?
Yeah, in a good example of the public art, and I suppose we could add the parking structure to that based on discussion today potentially. That is $3.1 million. We have projects nowhere near $3.1 million. So in terms of prioritizing things there, this is one where we could accomplish all 3 of those things with the funds available. So there really isn't a financial competition going on there. Where some of these other funds, obviously, we don't have. We do not have the funds. So ARPA is the big unknown. Yeah. That it sounds that way. If it's it'd have to pass the requirements of public art per the code. But my answer now would be potentially. I think we'd have to see what that looks like. But sure, I think if it's designed correctly and if it qualifies.
Oh, let's make sure we're using the microphone, Tim's saying. Thanks.
Sorry.
Yeah, if it qualifies, if the parking structure, whatever is done up there, qualifies as a public art. I'm not a public art. Maybe Bruce may want to talk on this. I'm no public art expert, but if he thinks we could design something that would qualify.
If we make it really pretty, it's going to be art.
I think your message of potentially is right on. And only the art pieces and the installation of those art pieces on there would qualify, not necessarily all of the things that Mickey was talking about wanting to do with safety and security of the parking garage, but potentially pieces of that project that are public art could be funded through that.
Okay, thank you.
On that, just like we've talked about sound walls, and you can't just put something on top of a sound wall. Engineering-wise, I mean, what happens if we put something else up there? How is that going to affect, especially if it's attached to it and big winds come through, and is the structural integrity there to do that?
These are all excellent points. We'll have to look into that. We'll have to look into that. With art, what is the ultimate goal of this project at the parking structure? Is it to prevent kids from throwing things over, but also look good? Then we've got to look into that as well. But yeah, you are right. We'll have to look at the structural integrity of whatever we put on that parking structure.
Okay, so the American Rescue Plan Act funds, these are semi-restrictive. I think for the most part here, they could backfill pretty much any of the projects we've been talking about. I think I would recommend that they backfill, either something that the general fund would pay for, or something that's really a high priority community need. But again, we've got the list up there: Innovation Center, remaining infrastructure, parks, community facility projects, all those things from the previous slide. And the big thing with the American Rescue funds is they can be used for the general provision of government services, which essentially is providing service to the public, which I think all of these initiatives are really doing that. So there's a lot of flexibility. There's 6.9 million here that can really be moved around as the council sees fit. And then
Can you
Yeah.
go back to the previous slide again, since you're now bringing up the funds for this?
this one.
Back to the previous slide before that. So it could be used for any of these items here?
I would say, yeah, these all look like provision of government services to me.
Okay, thanks.
And then items that would come, oh, I want to start real quick on that. So there's a plus next to that 1.26 million. That was put there yesterday because we did get an update on our property tax estimates from our property tax consultant. They're looking at about a 6.1% increase is their new estimate. They were at about 4.5%. So that extra 1.5% is projected to be another $300,000 per year or so. So if you put that on top of this, that includes the bond refinance. So if you put them together, you're looking at close to 1.6, 1.5, 1.6 million. So that's really the number, which could really help in these staffing discussions as well. If there's concern about how we're going to get up to the staffing we need and do these projects, there is some additional funds there. So that's what the plus represents. And then here's a list of the projects that have been talked about and that you're going to be asked to consider here in just a minute when Tim takes over. But these are generally general fund projects that again ARPA could come in, but otherwise you're pretty much going to be looking at general fund.
Did we discuss the community service day? Did I miss that? Did I take a quick nap?
No, we did not. Good catch.
What does that entail?
I think in short, it was to say, can we put together an annual community service day and encourage the community to get together and do service in various ways, and that's something with very low cost, and we could certainly work that in very easily.
Yeah, we used to do Earth Day with Friends of Marsh Creek Watershed. The Park and Rec Department started that back in the early 2000s. And then Friends of Marsh Creek Watershed, when they became an organization, started taking it over with the help of Parks and Rec. So, I mean, we could continue that day, or Martin Luther King Jr. Day is another good day to have a...
The City of Walnut Creek has a program already in place if you wanted to borrow from what someone else is already doing successfully.
Does the council have a preference for which holiday or which day of the year to do?
It depends on, I mean, if we're looking at trying to launch something sooner rather than later, is that enough time before Martin Luther King Jr. Day?
When is that? May?
January.
January?
Oh, then no.
I think it's like the third weekend,
Why not?
third weekend, and it's it could be in the middle of the week too, or on the weekend, depending on when it lands.
I don't have a preference around the actual day as long as we can somehow connect it. Like there's National Volunteer Month, and there's
Earth
a
Day
lot
has
of
a nice feel.
something.
That's
I don't know about
April.
Earth Day because I wouldn't want it to necessarily only be environmentally focused, but something that's more like giving back, Volunteer Month, that kind of thing. And I think it's going to be all about the branding and just about like hyper local. What can you do to help your fellow man and nonprofits in town?
Are you envisioning a weekday or a weekend?
Weekend would be easier for
Yeah,
sure.
I was thinking weekend. I don't know
Yeah.
about the participation on a weekday.
Exactly. No, I'm definitely thinking of a weekend.
Okay, we'll look into that and give
Thank
you a
you.
couple options.
Thanks.
Okay, I think this is probably the last slide here. We talked a little bit about bonding capacity. Again, this is if you're looking to do projects that total more than our available dollars on hand. So we're talking, when you start talking several million, pushing towards 10 million. Again, this is some of the work we're going to go back and do before we come back to you based on the priorities and what council directs us to do. But if we were going to look at a bond, you can see the debt service up there and how much we have in project dollars. $15 million bond, $750,000. Not necessarily all general fund, depending on who's responsible. So development impact fees might be responsible for a piece, as we talked about with the Sand Creek Sports Complex would be an example. So again, these are all the things that we'll have to go back and put actual numbers to based on what the direction is. There is some additional research that would have to, we'd have to talk to bond counsel about. We're comfortable that we'd be able to bond for probably close to 20 million. Financially, we have more room than that, more capacity than that, but there are laws that govern this, and to stay within the really the restrictions placed on us by the laws. I believe we're close to 20 million. Again, this is something we'll have to confirm, but that's about the number. But we can always combine things. So if we want to do a very large project, we could do a bond, and we can contribute existing city cash too. So it's not necessarily a restriction as a top dollar amount that you could have on a project. And it was mentioned earlier, sales tax measure, just for informational purposes, a 0.5-cent sales tax would generate about $5 million annually. And of course, bonding off of that you could get a lot of project dollars. And there's other revenue, the hotel tax increase on there could generate a couple $100,000. That would be a vote of the people for something like that.
But would that deter anyone wanting to open a new hotel in town at 12%?
I would defer to.
I've been a
Savannah.
part of increasing the TOT taxes, and it's outside residents paying for those when they come to stay, and there's usually hardly any opposition. The opposition usually comes from those hotel vendors themselves who
That's
are
what I'm
fearful.
thinking. Yeah.
But you would just get their buy-in early on it, and 2% increase, 12% is market rate, so it shouldn't be a deterrent at all.
Our neighboring cities are all about 12%?
I haven't done that analysis,
Okay.
but in my last city, the region, it was about 12% was the region, as the average here. I don't know, it's probably comparable.
Okay.
Anybody know?
No, but the county is 10%.
I mean, the other cities are turning their hotels into shelters, so I don't know how that works. In fact, didn't we hear that was it Pittsburgh that's losing $750,000 a year in TOT now that they're turning it over to, anyway, not on the agenda. Okay,
so
my
this-
turn?
Yeah, this is here.
Their turn? No.
Yeah.
Actually, I need the 5 minutes to count and tabulate things.
Can I just mention one more thing on the community
Please.
service day that I forgot to say, that I think it should be held on a day that isn't going to be like 110 degrees out. So something in one of the cooler months potentially.
Well,
Ideal.
and that's why, I mean, Martin Luther King Day would probably be good. I know it's in January, so it's a little fast to.
Yeah, I don't recall it. You have access. When is National Volunteer Month? Or day, for that matter?
Should I thank you now? All right, let's do a 5-minute break.
We will
April.
take a 5-minute break.
So did you hear that, Tim?
National Volunteer Week is, and well, that's the same time as
Mayor, we are live. Okay to proceed?
Let's proceed.
Okay. So each of you have a spreadsheet in front of you, and your name is not darkened out, so you don't put it in the wrong category, but give you an opportunity to categorize yours with the top 10. So this is what we're recommending. You can certainly change it, but let's start with if you just put 10 as your number one priority, down to number one as your lowest priority, and then we'll score those across and kind of give it some weight once we tabulate these. So take a few minutes and go ahead. Now, we just discussed the Community Service Annual Day as something that may not have a significant cost, and we can just make that a priority. So consider that one already tackled.
Can I ask a question? Sorry. Citywide pavement, is that just the roads or is that sidewalks? Does it include the sidewalk on Fairview right at Sand Creek? Mr. Sean's sidewalk, that the curb is done, but not the sidewalk?
You're talking about the missing sidewalk along the east side of Fairview Avenue.
Yes, that's
We've
it.
applied for a grant for that particular section of sidewalk twice. Both times have been denied. We're going to try a third time this year. We're going to try to spruce up our application and include maybe some discussion about landscaping, and hopefully that'll allow us to get
So
a
this
grant.
doesn't include that section?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Is this part of the SB1 funding that comes in as well? So we'll have enterprise funds paying for the majority of this, or is this coming out of general fund?
Is what coming out of?
The pavement improvement of citywide pavement conditions.
This will be in addition to the Measure J and the RMRA funds.
Okay, okay.
And how does this all get compiled?
So what we'll have you do is just hand those down once you're done, and we'll put it in here and show it on there so everyone can see, the public can see how you scored these, and then we'll see how it turns out. And again, 10 is your top priority, 9 is your second highest priority, down to 1 is your lowest priority. And whoever gets done first, I'll give you an extra point.
On the Sand Creek Complex Phase 1 fields, does that include, can we include the city portion, the 13 acres, and the county 20? Because I'd like to see how much they both are. And then the building would be the third phase.
Yes. So we put fields because we figured that would be the low-hanging fruit to at least get something started, but you could certainly...
Can we just get like 2 buckets and see what we can do there? Is that okay?
So yeah, if you score that category as a priority, we'll assume it's all the things that we can possibly finance and get done.
Okay, awesome. Thank
Yep.
you.
Should play some Jeopardy music.
So Mickey, sorry, but it is the sidewalks over by Brentwood Boulevard?
Is what for the sidewalks?
The citywide pavement condition? Where is that area? Now I'm confused. Oh, underground? No, I'm talking about number 4. Like, what area is that?
Is that pavement management program?
Oh, that's where the bubbles, and we're like an 80-something?
Right. So that's looking citywide at all the streets
Okay.
and sidewalks.
Okay, thanks.
Question for Carrie. Should we have them add to number 22 as do they want to do a bond and get some direction that way too? Well, we'll just ask.
Carrie, we can't hear you. Oh.
Bruce, question on the best estimate possible, just doing 2 fields at Sand Creek Sports Complex.
It's really hard to know. It could be just 2 fields at Sand Creek.
And if you say a number, they're not going to forget it.
Yeah, I really am hesitant to put a number out there.
Karen won't forget it. She
right.
doesn't forget anything.
I mean, Sand Creek will be looking at options and phasing, so based on funding sources.
Well, and the artificial turf I looked up was 750,000 to 1.3, but being that supplies have been, so let's say 1.5 per field.
So what about the grass component of it? The grass fields, if we were going to use the basin, what would a comparable grass field be in comparison?
We're gonna have to look at this further. I don't have enough information. I'd hate to quote you something that's inaccurate.
So, no pun intended, ballpark figure, comparing what a grass field is to, well, okay, pun intended, compared to a turf field. In general, how much less expensive are grass fields to install?
Turf grass, natural grass will be less expensive than artificial turf to install, and
20%, 50% ish?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it
okay,
is. So.
thank you. I won't put you on the spot. Thanks.
But turf fields are hotter during the summer, and they get those little tire shards in eyes, and they swallow them, cause cancer, that kind of stuff. So they're not problem free, but they definitely work more year round than the natural fields will.
Well, the year-round aspect of it, when you're talking about how to fund that project, would make a significant difference in how quickly and easily you can fund it, because just doing some cursory conversations with other cities and other sport complexes.
Oh, microphone.
So just doing cursory conversations with other cities, other sport complexes, and sports teams. I was told by every group I spoke to that if we had these kind of facilities, there would not be time where they wouldn't be fully booked. in this environment.
If you build it, they will come?
Exactly. Perfect. Yes, if we build it, they will come. And that was up and down the state. Different, I mean, college, professional, and community, different groups, they all said the same thing. There's such a need for this kind of product that if we built it, we wouldn't have to worry about scheduling fields. So I was just wondering, with that information,
Yeah, 25 to 50% more is my guess.
thank you.
But you don't have to water it, so you save on the water. Anybody ready for me to pick yours up yet? We can start tabulating it, and we'll show it here.
Now, Tim, one of the hard things about this was some are large, expensive projects, and some are a lot smaller. So it's like, I would love to have that big old expensive one, but the reality that might happen in 10 years, where maybe the smaller ones could happen in a year or two, and, you know, the priority of that, right? So that's why this was hard for me, because I think some of these I would have put 10 on a lot of them, but it's also, I mean, some are costing 30 million and another one's 2 million.
50,000.
Yeah, yeah, 50,000, you know, it's like, well,
Yeah,
we might as well
those
get what we
smaller-
can right now.
Those smaller ticket items, once we come back to in February with better cost estimates, we may be able to just work some of those additionally into the operating budget. When
Okay.
Carrie just highlighted, found 300,000 more in sales tax that we didn't disclose to you just 2 weeks ago. So things are always in flux.
So that's
And
where
then-
this was hard for me at least.
Sure.
Because obviously there's, I mean, just a different in cost.
So, and in addition to this, I thought we were going to be having some discussion before this, but I actually, in order to bring this up, I resigned from the John Marsh Historic Trust Board, because we do have an MOU with them, and our economic development strategy plan actually talks about working with the John Marsh Historic Trust. And they have requested, at our last meeting, there was several emails that came through requesting 200,000 for the IC, which could possibly come out of Ag Enterprise. And it would be a picnic area with history of farming in the area, as well as the John Marsh House, because the John Marsh, or not just John Marsh, but the entire area in the 1800s had the finest wheat in the world. It was shipped worldwide because it was such a hard kernel. It didn't mold and so forth in transport. So we are an area that was known for wheat back when they were doing dry farming. So that's something that could be included in on the John Marsh, I mean, the $200,000, especially since not only do we have an MOU with them, but we also have it in our Economic Development Strategic Action Plan.
Yeah, we didn't include it when we talked about it on the November 9th, but, I mean, Damien, any thoughts about us being able to add that at this point, if the council would like to do so?
I think given that this is their strategic initiative discussion, in the past, we've always kept an option open for them to talk about initiatives that have been discussed prior to this, and I think this had been brought up before, so I think if it wants to be part of the discussion, I think that'd be okay. This is probably the broadest time the council can be able to discuss issues. We try and make this agenda as wide as possible.
So how would the council like to either add this or not to the spreadsheet that you've already turned out? We could certainly add it now as an 11th top priority if it's of
So
interest.
it's money out of ag for John Marsh?
The Ag Enterprise for Tourism, it would be advertised on the harvest time signs.
Okay, how much money do we have in the ag budget? Like, don't we have money in like an account?
Yeah.
Sorry, Carrie.
It's several million that we've got in there.
We identified 2.8 million in the financial capacity memo.
We have two, and they're asking for 200,000, and we can't use it for anything else but ag.
Yeah.
And is it, I'm sorry, it's an event that they're having?
No, it's, what it is they're looking at creating a interpretive center there. So it's a parking area, it's picnic tables, it's a cover, and it's interpretive panels that are out there. So it could be open to and used on the harvest time wayfinding signs, pointing people for picnic areas at the John Marsh House. We had talked about having that added as part of a part of those wayfinding signs. And it is something that that did come up through the past thing, but because I was on the board at that time, you know, one of the reasons why they asked, and they had asked Mayor Bryant before me, were to be a liaison to the city to help get things done. But if we're, you know, hand-tied, hog-tied, that, you know, that we can't vote on it or bring it up or have to recuse ourselves. And so that was why I resigned, was because I can't do anything for them if I'm on the board. But I'm no longer on the board. I spoke with Damien about it this morning. And
I'd love to support them. I think the one thing that the reason I'm hesitant is because they got all this money from the state, and we haven't understood what they're doing with that money yet. Like what?
That would be strictly for the renovation of the house, where this is an interpretive center that is part of the park, and it would actually open the park up for visitors to be able to access this thing and to be able to use it into the future, not just so as people came into the park, once it does get open all the way, I mean, this thing would still be there. The John Marsh Historic Trust has fourth graders come out to learn about the history of California. It's California history for fourth graders. And so this also gives them shaded area and picnic tables and so forth to do a lot of their work at.
Is this something we have to do today, or could we do this anytime if it's out of ag money?
I mean, we can do it at any time, but right now we're looking at what we are going to spend our money on over the next 2 years. And I thought, okay, well, if I'm not going to be able to speak about it today, if it was said I couldn't, the whole idea is not to keep adding things on to the work of our staff throughout the year and try to stick to our strategic initiatives.
Yeah, but this is just giving them a check. It's not like...
It is just giving them a check.
So I think my thing is I would like for them to come and tell us what their strategic plan is, because they just got a ton of money. And I mean, besides that day the other day, I'm not seeing any action from them at all. And I'm more than happy to, I mean, it's part of the ag money, but I'd like to see what their vision is and how they're going to engage the community and drive traffic there, and like, do they have a marketing plan, like all that kind of stuff, because I haven't seen anything. And I just, you know, and again, I don't mind doing
it. That's
but maybe
because the park's not open, and until they got that $200,000, they can't open up that section of the park.
Can I also say, I think, I totally agree with what you're saying, Councilmember Mendoza. I know the state there's a block on some of the things that they can do. We need to see that there is action as far as like fundraising and outreach and campaigns and such, but yet the website hasn't been able to get launched because of...
Well, because the state's holding on to it.
But I do think that the trust could potentially put something in writing as far as here is how we could actually spend this money and what our timeline would be and what our priorities are to get this thing moving.
Unfortunately, it all goes through the state, and until the state determines...
But even if we gave them that money for the picnic areas or whatever, that would still have to go through the state.
No, just the planning process of it, and we've already got the design of it. So the design has already been done. It's in, you know, with the state, and I mean, that state actually created their thing and put it back. So it's a matter of getting the funding in order to do that. So that would be one thing that can open up immediately once that is open. It gives people from UPIC a place to go and picnic, learn about the history of our area, and also to increase the amount of kids that we can have out there for the fourth grade California history. The house, unfortunately, as you said, you gave the money, you didn't give the money to the trust, you gave the money to the state. So the state parks is the one who's in charge of doing that, and we can't do any fundraising because you can't, well, not we, the trust can't do any fundraising until the state says, here's the projects that we're going to work on. Because how are you going to get the money or get matching funds? I've got quite a few things that I'm going to help them with that we could send off to them, but you can't ask for money, at least in those large quantities, without a project. And they haven't presented a project yet.
Oh, go ahead.
But I also think there's a lot of other methods of fundraising. It's just not matching funds or large funds like that. But, I mean, the Historical Society for many years, I mean, not the Historical Society, the John Marsh House has gotten funding through the city. Carrie, how much money, do you know how much we've given to the John Marsh House? Or have we done any recently? Or I know over the years we've given them certain grants and
But
funding.
that money came from somewhere else, and it came through that other place, through that, it was California cultural something that was given to the city, then was given to John Marsh.
Why
But
don't
that's-
we
so
just
my
come
thing
back
is-
with a staff report and have all this information for you to consider maybe sometime in December or 1st of January, and then that's time to add it to the strategic plan initiative in
Yeah,
February?
but I'll be honest, I don't even know why we're adding it. I mean, to be honest, they've received a lot of money. I mean, maybe it's another discussion for another day, but as part of our strategic plan, the organization itself has received over $1.some million. And they're
No,
not-
they haven't. The
Okay,
state
okay.
parks
The
has.
state parks has, that's going to be directed to the John Marsh, I would think, right? Is that what
No, it never comes to the John Marsh
Okay.
Historic Trust.
So I'm not sure how that works, because I thought I read that it was going to John Marsh, at least that's my
It'll
understanding.
go to the project, she's saying not to the trust, but
Yeah, but I mean, I work in that arena too. So if it's given to this, let's say, organization, it's allocated specifically for John Marsh. So, I mean, when you talk about Brentwood, we still have, that's like us asking for the Brentwood Historical Society to be on there, right? The
They're
Nails
not
property.
in the
No,
city of Brentwood.
this is
This
inside the
is
city
actually
limits.
within the city limits.
So John Marsh is in the city of Brentwood?
There's
Marsh
what,
House is
56 acres, is it, that's within the city
Within,
limits?
yeah.
And was actually, as I mentioned earlier, part of what the city is considering parkland, which will bring us up to 4.3 acres per 1,000 residents.
I just feel at this time, we have other priorities that we could take care of. The John Marsh Trust has received a lot of money to be able to do a lot of service out there.
let's
and that's
do
good.
this. If the council wants to change one of your top 10 you gave to the John Marsh House, then that can resolve this today.
What I think is, I know you said staff would come. I would love to hear from the actual Historic Society. I don't mind giving the 200,000. I really don't.
You mean
I
John
just
Marsh.
think like
The John
Trust. Sorry, yeah, John Muir, John Marsh. Just, I would love for them to come and present to us and tell us what their vision is, because I haven't heard it from them. So maybe they could come. And again, we have the money. We have $2.8 million for agriculture. This falls into that category. There's nothing wrong with spending that money there, whether it's Farmer Pete's farm or the house. It doesn't matter to me. But I would love to hear from them if they could come and present to us. And by all means, like anything we could do to help with tourism, I'm all about it.
I would support bringing it back like that.
We can reach out to them and see if they can make a presentation in January.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if you want to push it out a little bit farther.
I do.
To get past. I mean, there's no immediate, yeah.
That those funds are available, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Great, we'll do that. So here's how the scoring resulted if we weighted it by just ranking it 10 to 1. I do notice let's just go through it. Sand Creek Complex Phase 1 fields, this would include all the phases being assessed, designed, and better estimates, and then maybe see what the funding sources could be. The Innovation Center at Brentwood scored second, This would be, again, filling some of the gaps of the infrastructure not otherwise covered by other funds. The sound study mitigation measures, working with local agencies or looking at some other options. Scored third. Fourth, citywide pavement condition. And when we bring this back to you in February, we'll come back with some ranges of how much do you want to commit to it. There may be a point of saying, if you only throw 100,000 more, that's really not going to do any good, but maybe 400, 500 would. Implement Brentwood Boulevard and downtown specific plans once they're approved, and that's still pending a few more workshops. Parking garage mitigation measures, again, those could be significantly widely ranging if we're adding more cameras, if we're enhancing the security guard contract to do more patrols, and what those costs will be, but we'll have that again in February. Underground the utility line off Brentwood Boulevard, we're going to pursue that clean grant due in February. If that grant doesn't materialize, then this would still be a strategic plan initiative. We could come back to you and say, hey, can we allocate some other funds then if we can't find it from the grant. Enhanced retail recruitment. Eighth, the tech center for the youth center, and I do notice a little concern here. We have it ranking 8th or 9th overall, but we have 3 who didn't vote at all for it. So I think we need to resolve that somehow at your direction, Mayor. Do we want to call an up or down vote on, do we want to have a youth center, the tech center, so we can finally resolve that issue? Because I'm concerned about 3 of the members not voting at all for it, giving it even a point. So,
Well, frankly, in order to move it forward at the council level, it's going to have 3 votes anyway.
right.
So at this point, I think we're at the point where it's an up or down for it right now. I think clearly this is something that I had on my list, and the vice mayor also. But if we're at that point, then for this location, that's where we are. So I think in order to free up a potential spot for something that has more support across council board, I think that's something that I don't, in all the discussions, I will just frankly say I'm not surprised that this was the result. I don't think that any of our conversations have changed or our viewpoints have changed from the beginning of this conversation. So I don't know that they would change significantly in the future. So this could potentially be something that we are able to put something there that there is more unilateral desire for.
Okay.
Well, 9 projects is a lot. I mean, do you guys need to have 10? I mean, 9 is a lot to go do all of the financials, all of like the timelines. So I mean, I'm just thinking from a workload perspective. Sorry.
And what we'll do is, as we do this analysis through February, is start with prioritizing these top 10. But if there's additional funds available, especially for those lower hanging fruit, those low cost ones, we can certainly probably slip those in as we go down the line. But it sounds like if the youth center at the tech center doesn't have majority council support, then is there still support for looking at a youth center somewhere else?
Can you also
And
scoop
chase
this
that
up so we
Measure
can
X
see what else is on this?
Yes.
Thank you.
Tim, I will tell you that a youth center for the city of Brentwood is, in my opinion, and many that I've talked to in the community, it's an absolute essentiality. We've got to have something for our young people. The COVID situation really brought to light the stresses that our young people are under when they are separate from each other. Not trying to be morbid, but the suicide rate in the state of California, the first 3 months of the lockdown equaled that for 2 years for young people under the age of 20 in the first 3 months of the lockdown. So, having something to give them support, a sense of community, ownership of the community, as well as all of the amazing programs that we could have, we absolutely have to, and we owe our families and our youth and our young people a center. Where that goes clearly is up for discussion, but I'm absolutely 100% in support of having a youth center here.
So Why not, and I brought this up once before when we first started discussing it, but we've got an entire floor, the second floor of the community center, and granted, Park and Rec, but, I mean, they're allowing people to come back into closer proximity to people, so we can move the staff back over there, but that's 4,000 square feet in that. There's a large area, there's several offices, there's a conference room, and then there's the office space where the chamber used to be as well. And so that's more than the 4,000. I don't know, that's probably another couple thousand in that. So, you know, we're probably up to 6,000 square feet worth of space that we could utilize. And the days that the community center isn't rented out, I mean, there could be programming down in that area or down in the art room. The glassed area downstairs is an art room, right? Or is that a exercise room? Or is that?
Yeah, that's more of an exercise room, a dance studio, but the art room is the one that's more in the back.
Okay,
Of the community
so,
center.
you know, you could utilize the art room for different art projects for, you know, programming for that. I mean, we've got the space, and it's in pretty good condition. It just means a matter of furniture and, you know, and programming in there.
I just want to say, in regards to that, Councilmember Rivers saying is the lack of consistency. Let's just shove it where we could fit it, right? Let's make room when we can.
Johnny, that
Can I
is
finish real
not
quick?
what I just
I know,
said.
I'm just listening.
No,
I'm
this
listening
is-
to-
no.
So my thing is that for us to have a youth center was to bring some consistency, for a location to be somewhere where young people know that they could go, but not only go to participate in either activities in the sense of sports, or go for counseling, or go for support when it comes to academics. When we did our surveys in the community, a large portion of our communities were saying, we need a location for our kids to get some tutoring and support. And that was one of the highest within your Latino families. But not only that, within a lot of the community. So one of the things that we don't have here in the city of Brentwood is consistency. Somewhere where they could go and they could actually call that place home, or that's somewhere I could go get support, or I could go get services. So for me, and I totally, it is what it is, it's okay, is when we talk about equity, because I hear that words a lot in here, it's really questionable, right? Equity and balance. It was an opportunity to run, to be able to bring our youth together in all portions of this community and provide services for them. It was also an opportunity, you know, we use fancy words about vision and impact. Man, imagine the vision and impact that could have made in those communities. They haven't seen the same vision and impact that the rest of the community has over the years when you go down to facilities and resources. We got the clinic. We got, I don't know what else we got over there, a park that's not open to the public on Sunset because you got to pay to use it, and this was a great opportunity. But I'll be honest with you, I respect the process because the process is there for a reason. So I'm not here to be anything, but if we're going to talk about now using the community center as a location, I've only been on the council for 4 years, but I know people have been here for many, many more years. And not at one point has anybody stepped up to be able to support the young people of Brentwood at this level that we could have. The community center, maybe it's located in a better environment area now, right? Maybe it's safer for families to come. Sad to say, but we have kids that walk in those communities on a daily basis because they don't have a choice. And there's kids out there that don't get the tutoring like maybe my son or other people's kids do, or are able to participate in things. And this was a great opportunity. But like I said, I totally respect the process. I'm not that type of, I totally respect it.
These
But
kids
for
actually have to
someone-
pass
for now that
Edna
we-
Hill,
so-
from
so-
Edna Hill
so
to
in saying
pass the
that-
community center to get back to their homes.
So going back to what I was saying is, and I told the mayor, I'm not going to go into all the numbers and data. We've already had that discussion, right? But there's one that I do want to mention. the schools, which is being brought up, is some of the most low-income schools, I guess, in students, and I don't have the stuff in front of me, so I'm not saying it correctly, where we could have made a really good impact. So I appreciate the process. I want to thank staff and everybody that's been part of this process. But let's not do the Band-Aid method, right? That's called the Band-Aid method, right? Let's just put it somewhere. Let's make it happen for a little while, and then that's it. You know, we could have done a lot more than that. So, yeah, just that's my piece, and thank you for everybody being part of that process.
Okay, great. Okay, back to your original question. Would we want it anywhere else? Yes. Let's find a place where we can build something new. Let's move forward with the $5 million for Measure X if possible, and let's see what we can do. Because if we're going to do something for them, let's do something nice and new that makes them know we care about them. So I don't know how everyone else feels about that, but I would like to move forward with another location. I know we have properties in different parts of town that we already own. Maybe one of those would be suitable.
Windsor Way.
What?
Windsor Way is in the master plan, could be maybe the location there.
I mean, I know we didn't vote it high on here because there's, conflicting, competing priorities. But yeah, Windsor Way, the $5 million, maybe we could use it there. That would be fantastic. So I think that's a great idea, and we should move forward with that.
So is the council still okay if I continue to try to pursue that funding source and find the right location? Obviously, come back to you with that location, but
yeah,
pursue that is worth.
Yes.
Say yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can't have Antioch get it. Now, two of you picked as your number one priorities the tech center or community center as the nonprofit hub. Did you really just mean community center, or do you also mean tech center? Because that may change what we do with that building next. So if you wouldn't mind just elaborating what you're...
What I was looking for, and I've been kind of saying this all along, being part of that ad hoc committee, is that I think it's so much more than wrestling or boxing or even a climbing wall. I think what I really felt like the community needed was resources. What they rated very high, if you look at the survey, was like cooking, for example. And some of the things that they really, really wanted were things that weren't even going to be a part of this if we did the lower budget youth center. So in me voting for the nonprofit hub, it was a idea that you could potentially have a nonprofit in there that focuses on kids, that does offer mentoring, tutoring, how to go on a job interview, how to cook a meal, how to make a budget out of a lower income to eat healthy. That's the kind of thing I was thinking would be really, really helpful. I'm all about, and I talked with Bruce about this, doing what we can to really make our programming for kids more robust. Like if we're seeing a missing link in Parks and Rec, can we put money towards that, towards increasing that programming for schools all across the city? That wasn't an item today, but the nonprofit hub was. And as we discussed, I feel like the nonprofits that are currently there and any nonprofits that we would invite to come would pay rent. They expect it. It's not that they expect a free ride. So some of the rents that come in could potentially increase programming for kids on site to work with a nonprofit who could teach them, again, how to cook, how to balance a budget, how to have some, after school tutoring and mentoring and that kind of thing. That's all along what I thought my focus would be, and that has not changed.
So if that's to go in the tech center, I think Bruce can clarify, but I think we still have some seven-figure numbers to rehab the building, even to do a nonprofit hub there. So does that change any of the priorities?
I'm sorry, I guess, how do we continue to pay for all of the overhead? And I think there's required stuff we have to do for that. How do we pay for that?
We'll know that in February. If you still want us to look at the tech center as using it, because if we're going to use it even for a nonprofit hub, that's still going to require significant upgrades.
For me, I guess for right now, this Measure X money, do we have to match the $5 million? Is that what is it a matching or is it a grant?
It's not matching the ongoing operating. They want their contributions 1.7 or whatever it was, that you at least have a 50% match to that. And I assume if you don't, then their contribution is less
the
thereafter.
ongoing?
But they do have ongoing commitment, which is huge.
Yeah. So and I think, I can't remember who I talked to about this, but someone, what are we in the business of? Are we in the business of being landlords? Is that our skill set? Is that what we do well? I don't know. I think that we should think about maybe putting it on the list and just getting it appraised, seeing what we could do with those funds with these other projects that are our priority, and then I don't know what it becomes, but economic development is one of the most important things we have in the city. We can't pay for anything else without that once we start weaning ourselves off of development fees. So that could generate money and traffic to that shopping center if it becomes the right, retail spot. So
Yeah.
I think it should be on the list of the properties just to explore that also. I think we need full line of sight to everything.
Bruce, do you remember the appraised value was at 1.6, 2.6? Oh, I've seen a few appraisals lately.
Well, everything's going up
I
every day.
think it was around
so-
1.6 million.
1.6. So even if we sell it for 1.6, the new buyer, and I don't want to dissuade a buyer, 500,000 to fix the
But that's expected, right? Gap Inc., I managed all of those. I paid for my own HVAC, right? The landlord didn't pay for
they
my
like
HVAC.
to
I
offset the
did all of that.
costs, is what they do, at
So-
least the public agencies. But yeah.
Yeah.
So we may not have a whole lot of revenue, not that whole amount, but
And can I mention too, like, as far as the tech center goes, we know that if we were to sell it, we would also, of course, not have that annual maintenance that we would pay for it.
Yeah.
But if we were to
300,000.
allocate money for this as a youth center, it's not just the initial. We never talked about, like, how do you outfit it? How do you get the equipment and the furniture, the supplies, and what is the cost every single year? We didn't even talk about that.
Insurance on a youth center.
So it looks like we'll come back to you early next year with those other 5 successor agency properties and present to you an option to sell the tech center if the nonprofit hub is not more viable, per se.
Isn't it $500,000 to run it a year?
300,000 a year in debt service and
Or
some
is it 300
utility
something? Sorry.
costs.
Yeah, we have in the long-term forecast about 200,000 per year in carrying costs of the tech center.
So yeah, so maybe understanding, do we think we can get the rent to cover just the ongoing costs from the nonprofits? Us be even, no profit made, because it would be nonprofit, but just to understand if we can cover that expense, that would be good too.
Can the other side be sold, or is it all one? So you've got the tech center on one side, and you have the LMC campus, old LMC campus on the other. So is the other side, can they be sold separately?
I believe it's one building.
That's what I think
And
too.
we have 2 tenants in there that are month-to-month tenants, and they're not paying any rent. So to charge other nonprofits significant rent to try to cover that 200,000, my guess is it's not going to be feasible, but we could certainly.
You'd have to
look into
charge
more.
the rent to the current occupants as well, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to you early next year, January, February, with a list of options then for that facility. Does that sound right? Lots of nods. Okay. Anything else on here that you like or don't like or want to revisit? Do these look like your top 10? Well, besides, I guess if we drop to get 10, the engagement Spanish translation.
So if we're taking the youth center off, to then does the engagement in Spanish translation become
I
number
put it in
10?
another color just to reflect that maybe we drop down and grab ticket 10.
I'd be okay with that.
I think we all
Yeah,
felt good
that
about
works.
that.
No, I'd
Yeah.
like to do that.
Okay. Now, they only had 2 votes there again, but are we okay? Do we need to visit that one too?
We'd have to see what the cost is too, as you
Absolutely.
said.
It's a huge range, so, okay. Damien, do we want a motion to approve this as their top 10? Or are we good with the consensus that I am sensing?
Sorry. I
Damien, that always sounds so ominous.
keeps you on your toes, I guess. On this one, the council, if they took a vote, really would be asking staff to move forward to do the people, time, and money analysis on these items. So it might help to have that vote, just so it's clear that these are the items that council would like to move forward. You're not approving these items tonight. You're not saying this is going to be your final list. You're really authorizing staff to move forward to do the analysis on the personnel costs, the time costs, and the monetary costs. So I think a vote would be appropriate.
Okay, if you were going to be monitoring the vote, or someone, since Margaret is not here who normally does, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to move forward these 10 items, to look at people, time, and money and bring it back to us at our February meeting?
Probably the second meeting in February.
A meeting in February?
Yep.
Okay, we have a first.
Second that.
And a second. All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. It's unanimous. Okay.
Look at that, it's 5 o'clock.
I want to thank all of staff for your outstanding information and presentations today. Thank council for all of the many hours that you have put in to this process. And